So I've always been interested in true crime, and while you might often hear of American serial killers, Canadian serial killers don't really get enough attention, and we have some pretty fucking awful ones at that. So here's my first attempt at covering one of these awful people. Just a little warning, we're gonna be getting into some topics here, some pretty serious topics, including obviously murder and some degree of SA. I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but just trigger warning, I don't want to be responsible. So before we get into that, thank you for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and leave a comment if you have anything nice to say. And with that, let's get right into the video. The man I'm about to tell you about was tried for 6 counts of second-degree murder, as this was the maximum sentencing that he could achieve to get life in prison. Life in prison in Canada is only 25 years, max. That being said, he was directly charged with the murder of 26 different women, and he himself, while he was in police custody, and he admitted this to an undercover officer while he was in holding, that the number was more like 49, and he was, quote, disappointed that he couldn't make it to 50. This man was Robert Pickton. Robert Pickton was born on October 24th, 1949, and grew up, and I'm sorry for how I pronounce this, Port Colquhoun, British Columbia. He grew up on a pig farm, and apparently he had an abusive childhood. He had a sister and a brother named Dave. We'll get more into Dave later. He was always socially awkward and would smell of manure and pig carcasses. This was due largely to the fact that he didn't shower, he didn't bathe really, and allegedly this was due to his mother's over-insistence on him bathing, which made him develop a fear of water, I guess, or just bathing in general. I'm not really too sure, but he just didn't do it. I heard a story that he would allegedly hide in pig carcasses to avoid people sometimes, and apparently somebody found him in there once. I'm not too sure how true that is. He also just worked on the pig farm a lot as well, so him working on a pig farm, it makes sense that he would smell of manure and pig carcasses, but I digress. What did allegedly happen though is when he was 12 years old, he apparently was raising a pet calf as a pet, and his father one day, once he got home from school, told him to go check the barn. He did so, and when he got there, the calf strung up by its legs, and it had its throat slit. It had been butchered. So his parents sound like pretty sick people also, just saying like that. It seems to run in the family. There's a story that in 1967, Dave, Robert's brother, was driving home one day after recently acquiring his license. He was 16 at the time, I believe, and basically he ended up running over a young boy named Tim. Dave then went home. He didn't stop, check if he was okay, do anything like that. He went home and he told his mother what had happened. And it's not too clear if his mother went back on her own or with Dave or what happened, but basically she got there and she ended up rolling the still alive boy into a ditch, where the cause of death was later found to be drowning, not of his initial injuries. Basically, Dave ended up going to juvie, and he got, I know he got some time for that, but his mother never actually received any charges for this, never actually received any blame for it. The neighborhood always speculated, and Dave did eventually admit to this once to somebody in confidence. So as you can see, his family life was pretty messed up. It was really no better, and you can kind of see where he gets it from, I'll say that much. By the time he was 16, Robert and his family moved to a new farm. This was to be the farm that he would eventually inherit and where the murders would end up taking place. His other 2 siblings would eventually end up faring far better than he did overall. His sister ended up running away in her teens, and his brother ended up eventually moving away himself. Now, fast forward a few decades, Robert basically has been living on this pig farm. He's been basically working up the pig farm, and he's actually pretty rich. He's got, in theory, multi-millions into this pig farm. He has multiple distribution centers, all that. He's got a rendering plant. He's doing pretty well for himself, but he still lives like a poor pig farmer. You know what I'm saying? Eventually, he ended up selling some of his property for, I think it was like $2 or $3 million, as well as he inherited quite a large sum of money from his parents once they passed away. So they sold a portion of this pig farm to these investors, but he still owned a good bit of acreage in like a suburban neighborhood kind of thing. Like it bordered a suburban neighborhood, it looks like, from like the aerials. But it was still a good chunk of land. So the Piggy Palace, as it was called, was a converted building on his farm, which Robert, his friends, criminal elements, sex workers, and drug users would often frequent. This property was also allegedly used as a chop shop by the Hells Angels. Vehicles could be seen littering the property at all times. Many of Robert's victims were visitors of the Piggy Palace, but many were also women that he would pick up in Vancouver's East Side, a place known to be one of the poorest. Sex workers and drug users often frequent this area, and basically a lot of shady things go on there. Not good. It's like you don't want to really just go there if you have no business going there, kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's officially believed that Robert started killing in the early 90s, but there's really no way to be certain of this. Many believing his first victim was in fact in 1979. Between 1978 and 2001, at least 65 women were reported missing from the downtown East Side, 26 of which were officially linked to Robert from the 90s on. But given how police handled the situation, and also how he covered up the evidence, nobody seemed to care or take notice that these women were disappearing. The problem was that Robert targeted only people he felt police would not go after. So when these people were reported missing, oftentimes nothing at all was done about it. This would be the first in quite a few failures by law enforcement. Police at this time did not treat every missing person case the same, unfortunately. 1997, a woman named Wendy, whom Robert had picked up, was handcuffed by Robert and cut multiple times with a knife. She managed to break free of the restraints, and she managed to stab Robert once and then escape. She ended up going to police, but when no charges were actually placed against Robert. Robert claimed that she was a hitchhiker who would have attacked him, and police did not deem her as credible because of her alleged drug use. Once again, another failure by police. In 1999, a worker on the farm by the name of Bill Hiscox started noticing that many of the women that would visit the farm would end up missing. He reported this to police, but they didn't take any action on it. Later that year, he contacted police again when a friend of his, who had been visiting the farm, told him that she had seen women's purses, clothing, and ID while she was inside the farm. Apparently, police could not obtain a warrant for this based on hearsay. Spring of that same year, an informant told police that a woman named Lynn had seen a woman's body hanging by her feet, like the livestock beside her. When police questioned Lynn about this, she denied the story and no action was again taken. Much later, she admitted that she did in fact see a woman, but she lied about it to police because she both feared Robert and depended on him for drug use. In early 2002, a former truck driver that worked at the farm told police that he had seen illegal firearms at the farm. This, of all things, prompted police to investigate the farm and to obtain a warrant, and what they ended up finding was truly horrifying. Not only did they find illegal and unregistered firearms, clothing, ID cards, an asthma inhaler from a woman who was reported missing, bloodstains, and human remains were all found on the initial investigation. A forensic team was brought in, and the DNA evidence and remains found no less than 33 separate women on the farm. But many remains could not be found at all due to the disgusting measures that Robert took to dispose of the bodies. It is believed that once these women were killed, he would mince their bodies into meat and mix it with ground pork, and then give it away or sell it. It is also believed a number of bodies were directly brought to a rendering plant. Others he fed directly to pigs, and there's evidence to point to that. DNA evidence was found, suggested cracked open skulls and bones were found in pig pens. There is no real way to know what happened to the victims before death, and no way to know his exact method for killing all of them. It is believed that all, or at least most women, were essayed beforehand, before either being shot in the head, which there is evidence for. There are other pieces of evidence, however, that methods were far more brutal, including cutting, strangulation, and even injection with antifreeze. Although there is no proof of this, you must also remember that for a lot of these unofficial victims, there is no evidence at all, because they decayed over time, or he completely was able to get rid of their bodies. Robert was placed in custody of February of 2002 for the murder of 2 women, but by 2005, 26 separate murder charges were placed on Robert. He had multiple witnesses and had so much evidence against him. In 2007, to achieve the maximum sentence in the shortest amount of time, Robert was ultimately convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder. He got a sentence of life with a minimum of 25 years, which sadly, that is the sentence of life here in Canada. He deserves to be away forever. This verdict did not sit well with a lot of the victims' families, although they were obviously glad he was behind bars. 6 second-degree murder charges doesn't bring justice to the many families whom DNA evidence was found for and no charge was placed on him for it all. It didn't quite feel like justice for a lot of them. I understand why they did it, but it is very unfair to them. I can see that. Robert was actually able to apply for day parole in February of this year, but thankfully justice was served. In May of this year, Robert was brutally attacked in prison by a fellow inmate. This placed Robert in a coma, and he died a few days later, thankfully. According to True North, apparently the RCMP also asked permission to destroy up to 14,000 pieces of evidence in 2023, which is just crazy to me. Many of the victims' families showed obvious outrage at this news. I can't see why they would want to do that when the true victim count is still completely unknown. At minimum, at least we can sleep soundly knowing that at least some justice came from within inside the system. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think of this video. This is my first attempt, and yeah, I have always found this subject interesting, and I plan on making a few more of these. I appreciate you guys watching. Peace, boys.